Hello, Bobcats! 5th grade math. We are still in chapter 3. We're actually going to start chapter 3 with lesson 5 today, and it's estimating quotients. And it is a 5th grade standard, so it's something you have to learn in 5th grade. I'm hoping that at the end of today's lesson that you'll be able to estimate quotients by using rounding and compatible numbers. So again, we're hoping to get an answer through estimation, and we're going to use some rounding and some compatible numbers. Why, Mrs. Wilhite? Why do I have to learn this? Well, I already told you it is a 5th grade standard, something you have to learn in 5th grade, but also mental math. When you think about solving problems in your mind, it makes things go quicker. And the faster you can solve a problem, the quicker you can get to that solution. So hopefully the skills of today's lesson will help you get to do some mental math and do some math problems a little quicker. All right, before we get into today's lesson, I want you to think about what do you already know about rounding and estimation? Well, I know that rounding really helps me figure out a good estimate. If I'm solving a problem and I'm able to round or think about what the answer's close to, that helps me figure out if my answer is reasonable or correct. That estimation or that rounding will help me see if I have the right answer. So from my experience, I know that using rounding and estimation is really good for seeing if something makes sense, seeing if you are right or seeing if you're wrong. And that's going to help us in today's lesson. All right, I want to go ahead and give you some steps to help you with today's problems. The first thing you want to do, step 1, is you want to estimate. You want to look at those numbers and figure out what is it close to. After you estimate, you can go ahead and divide. So 1, estimate, 2, divide, and then finally, is it reasonable? Don't move on to the next problem until you really look at your answer and see, does it make sense? All right, Math in My World, example 1. A dog's heart beats 365 times in 3 minutes. Wow. About how many times does a dog's heart beat in 1 minute? So I see a question. I'm going to underline that because I have to answer that question. How much does the heart beat in 1 minute? Well, step 1, I'm going to estimate. So 365 can be changed. I'm not going to choose 400. Because 4 is not a multiple of 3. I want to choose a compatible number. 360 or 36 is compatible. I can divide 3 into 36. So I would estimate to 360. Step 1, estimate. Step 2 is to divide. Well, I can divide 3 into 360. I'm going to start with 36. 3 goes into 36 12 times. And then I can go ahead and do my pattern or add that 0, my mental math. And I'm going to think about the answer. Is it reasonable? How many times does a dog's heart beat in 1 minute? Well, if it's 365 in 3 minutes, 120 times 3 does give me 360. So 120 every minute makes sense. It's reasonable. Let's try the next one. All right, we're ready for example 2 in Math in My World. Estimate 208 divided by 8. Well, I know step 1 is estimate, and if I look at 208, I got to make a good choice about what to estimate that number to. Well, I know a multiple of 8 is 24. 8 times 3 is 24. So I want to use 24. So I'm going to estimate to 240 so that I have something that's compatible or that would work for the number 8. So I can go ahead and estimate to 240. Well, I can do my mental math. I can divide. Step 2, 8 divides into 24 3 times. I can also say that this 0 here, I'm going to add that. If I wanted to keep this as 8 and not estimate it to 10, I'm guessing that it's close to 30. I concluded the answer is 30. I think it's reasonable because If I multiply 30 times 8, I do get 240. So I'm going to pick 30. Let's try guided practice. Estimate 850 divided by 9. Well, step 1 is estimate. What am I going to estimate 850 to? Well, I know my multiples of 9. I know that 9 times 9 is 81. I also know that 9 times 10 is 90. So do I want to estimate it to 900 or 810? Well, I'm going to choose 810 because it's closer to 810. So 850 is estimated. Step 2 is to divide. Well, I can divide using that mental math. 9 goes into 81 9 times and add my 0. So it's about 90. It's reasonable because 90 times 9 gives me 810, which is my estimation. So I know I have the answer that's about correct. All right, let's try independent practice. Again, we are going to estimate for step 1. So I'm going to estimate what is a multiple of 8. Well, 64 is a multiple of 8. So I'm going to choose 640. I can divide 8 into 64 and add my 0. If I look at problem 3, I'm looking for what is a multiple of 5. Well, I know 55 is a multiple of 5. So I'm going to estimate to 550. I want to use those compatible numbers when I round or estimate. So I know that 5 goes into 55 11 times and add my 0. Okay, so I estimated, I divided. Last, check to see, is it reasonable? Does your answers make sense? Well, I know that 80 times 8 is 640. And 640 is pretty close to our original number that we're putting into equal groups. So it's reasonable that the answer would be 80. It works. If I look at 110, if I have 110 in 5 different groups, well, that's 550, and that's pretty close to what we're actually breaking up into groups. I know I have answers that are about the correct answer. It's almost there. So I can go ahead and move on.
Thank you so much.
All right, here we go, Bobcats. We're in independent practice. We're skipping to number 8. So we're going to estimate. I got to think about what's compatible for 9. What do I want to round or estimate this to? Well, I know that 9 times 3 is 27. And 9 times 4 is 36. So I think it's closer to 27 or 270. So I'm going to estimate it to that. Step 2 is divide. Well, 9 goes into 27 3 times with my 0. I know 30 times 9 is 270, and that's really close to what I have to break up into groups. So it's reasonable to say it's 30, around 30. What is a multiple of 6? What is close to 6? Well, 6 times 8 is 48. No, 6 times 9 is 54. Oh, I think it's 6 times 10. I think 60 is pretty close. It's compatible. So 600 divided by 6 is 100. So again, let's see if it's reasonable. 106 different groups is pretty close to 584. So I think the answer is about 100. Again, remember today we're trying to estimate the quotient. We're trying to estimate the answer to a division problem. We're going to use rounding, and we're going to estimate an about answer, and I think we're getting it. All right, problem solving. A grocery store employee put 8 bagels in each bag. If she has 385 bagels, how many bagels does she need? Or how many bags does she need? So she has 385 total bagels. She puts 8 in each bag. So we're going to put 385 into groups of 8 because each bag holds 8 of them. Okay, I need to know how many bags will she need for all of those bagels. Well, again, we're just finding an estimation. We're just looking at the quotient, the answer to this problem, and trying to figure out what is it about. They're not asking for the actual answer in this lesson. We're working on estimating. Well, I know a compatible number for 8 is 8 times 4 is 32, and 8 times 5 is 40. So I'm actually going to say it's closer to 400 as my estimation. And I need to see how many times will 8 go into 400. Well, I know 8 times 5 is 40, and I can add that 0. So I concluded that it's about 50 bags that are needed. It's reasonable because 50 times 8 is 400, and that's actually right around how many bagels we have. So she's going to need somewhere around 50 bags. All right, Bobcats, number 15. A student email to troops contained 250 characters. The 4-line email contained the same number of characters on each line. About how many characters were on each line? Show how you estimated. Okay, well, there was 250 total characters. And then there were 4 line emails that they used. So how many were on each of those 4? Well, I'm going to get an estimate. I want to know about how many were on each, not an exact accurate answer. So step 1, we're going to estimate. What is a multiple of 4? What's a compatible number? Well, that's 24 or 240. And then if I divide, step 2, I know that 4 goes into 24 6 times. So I think there's about 60 characters on each of those 4 lines. If I multiply 60 times 4, I get 240, and 240 is pretty close to 250. So that's a good estimation. It's reasonable. Janie drives 290 miles in 5 hours. About how many miles does she drive each hour? Well, 290 total miles she drove in 5 hours. How much is in each of those hours? Well, I want to know about how much did she drive in an hour. Well, this is pretty close to 300, and 30 is a multiple of 5. So I'm going to estimate or round to 300. Step 2 is divide. Well, 5 goes into 30 6 times, and I need my 0. I know 60 is about how much she drove in each hour. If I multiply 60 times the 5 hours that she drove, then that gets me pretty close to her total mileage. So 60 miles per hour is a reasonable answer. All right, Bobcats, what did you learn today? Well, today we talked about the word estimate, and we also talked about rounding. Estimating and rounding is getting close to a number. It's about. It's not the accurate, the exact answer. And I learned today, in summary, I learned that when you have an estimation, it can get you pretty close to the accurate answer. And if you get an estimation, then you can see if it's reasonable, see if it's correct. So today, hopefully when you're working on your independent work, you'll be able to find that compatible number, estimate, do your mental math, and then of course, check and see if it's reasonable. Thank you for your attention.